Hi, and welcome to Stamp with Ginny. Today I'm going to show you how to cover a plain wood frame with designer series paper. So let me set this aside and we'll get started. The first thing you're going to need is a plain wooden frame. I happen to pick this one up at a big box store. I've done a little prep work here. I have taken some inexpensive acrylic white paint and done the outside edges and the inside edges here on the frame so that it's a little more finished, but you don't have to do that if you don't like. I did cover the white paint with an acrylic sealer so that would not be a problem in the future. So let me show you the next step. You're going to cut your designer series paper down to the size that you need, and all I did was measure my frame's width and height to get that measurement. So now that I've got my piece of designer series paper, and this happens to be the Succulent Garden designer series paper, I thought it would be nice for spring. I've measured this 8.5 and 6 3/8 because that's what my frame happens to measure. Okay, I'm going to put a little mark here and a little mark on my designer series paper so I know what side of the cardstock I want lined up with which side of the frame. It simply gives you a little better fit when you're finished. I'm going to make sure that that paper is even all the way around, and then I'm going to set that down and take my pencil and trace the inside opening of this frame, and that gives me my basic shape, so I can set the frame aside for now. The next thing I'm going to do is take my paper trimmer, and I like to take this line and set it up on the track here so that it's right in the center of this plastic groove. And then I'm going to pick my blade up, press down, and slice that designer series paper. And I'm finished with this Stampin' Trimmer. At this point I'm going to take my paper snips, and that just gets me started. So now I'm ready to go around that traced line to cut my frame. And this is where that tick mark is so important, so that you know where to line that paper up on which side of your frame. Okay, so now this piece of designer series paper can be set aside. And now that I'm finished cutting out that inside shape, I'm looking for my marks to line up the edge so that I've got it the right way. And I can set this on top of my frame and see if I'm happy with it. There's a little bit of overlap here on the one side, so if I wanted to, I could take my scissors and trim that again slightly. The next thing I'm going to do is to take my quarter rounder, and I am going to snip those corners to help with the shape of my frame, because these corners are rounded, and our corner rounder just happens to fit perfectly. Line that designer series paper up again and make sure I'm happy with it. We're going to sand the inside edges and the outside edges just to smooth it down a bit, so you don't have to worry too much if there's a slight little gap. I'm going to take my multi-purpose adhesive, and I am going to apply it generously to the outside edge of this wooden frame and the back of my designer series paper. I want to make good contact between the two, so a little extra adhesive on this case is not a bad thing. Now that I have adhesive applied to both the back of my frame and the back of my designer series paper, I know where that little tick mark is, so I know which way is up, and I'm ready to set this down and line it up carefully. And while I'm doing that, I'm smoothing the paper down to spread that adhesive all around so it's making good contact. I'm going to set this aside to dry so that I know I can work with it for the sanding process. Okay, my frame is dry and that adhesive is fine, so now I'm going to take my sanding block, and if you don't have a sanding block, they're real easy to create. Just stop by the hardware store, pick up some really fine grit sandpaper, as fine as you can find, and simply wrap it around a block of wood, and you'll get the same kind of ability to sand things like I'm doing. And this also, as you can see, will curl or take the excess paper off if there's a slight edge that you missed in your trimming process. You'll do that to the outside and the inside. Now be prepared, this is a messy job, so let me finish that up and I'll show you what I have. Okay, like I said, the sanding block is not a necessity, but I do like to use it. I feel like it seals the edges a little bit and it gives me a nicer finished product. So at this point, I'm ready to start decorating. It's that quick and easy. Okay, let me show you the finished product again. If you'd like any of these products, feel free to stop by my online store. It's open 24/7 and you can get there from my blog, stampwithjini.com. Thanks for joining me.